We have a Part A matter, construction site hoardings, temporary use of legal road fee rebate, and there is a recommendation from staff with an amendment to substitute 100% for 50%. But if that were, if we were generally acceptable with that, we could actually put that into the main resolution rather than deal with it by way of amendment. So let's just test the water first and see how people are feeling about the matter. Perhaps if I could call...
Because Paul's away at the moment, the chair of this committee is happy to second that, in fact.
Well, if you're happy to second it, why don't we just make it the resolution of the actual resolution that we're considering? So if we could just take the committee recommendation and change the word 50% to 100%, and we'll have it moved Jamie Goff and seconded Phil Clearwater. And so now I will call Phil Clearwater.
Well, when our committee first looked at that, we thought 50% was pretty reasonable, and the costing there will be $100,000 a year. And I think the whole, I've had discussions with Councillor Goff and some others very briefly. I think the whole point is to have this as a good incentive as possible. And if it's up to 100%, and like if we can imagine how all the hoardings around the city will look, and this is for a considerable number of years in the future, if in fact they are really great, and if there are some neat things happening, how good that will be. And so I think to give every incentive to the businesses and the developers who will have the hoardings, and I would stress it is up to 100%, and there'll be clear criteria, is my understanding, to actually achieve that. So that's why I'm supporting the change from what the committee decided.
Very good. Jamie, did you want to?
Yeah, I will. So thanks for that, Phil, and I appreciate your support with this. Look, as we all know, there are so many impediments to development here. If we don't have development, we don't have investment in the city that we all love. We don't have a rebuild. And so often we've seen this capital flight where financial advisors, accountants, bankers, they're saying, do you know what? There's too much uncertainty. There's cost escalation. There's so many fees. Take the tangible return, the rate of return that exists in an existing building, put it into Austin, Texas, put it into Wellington, put it into Melbourne. There are 3 real-life examples that have happened in this city from born and bred Cantabs that have had an insurance payout and they've put it offshore. I sit around this table because I want everyone to love Christchurch as much as me, and I want it to end up that city that I know it can be, but that's only going to happen from people backing this city. The reality is with the hoardings, occupational health and safety requires that a fence is erected when you construct a building. The city plan requires that you build to the frontage, so automatically there's going to be some encroachment on the footpath. Now these pieces of regulation were put into place before the entire city was a construction zone, so I think it's a very different environment now. Now you've got 2 options. Do you want to have the cheap and dirty fencing, the hurricane fencing that goes up there, or would you like to say to these people, do you know what, we understand that it's a challenging time, but we're really supportive of you putting the investment back into Christchurch, and if we have the entire city that has hoardings around there, which is providing safety for the public, but looks attractive and creates a little piece of artwork on every corner. I think that's fantastic. I've spoken with staff, I've spoken with the general manager. It's something that they're supportive of and it is workable. For a small fee, it's a really good outcome because the reality is we are going to be a city that is a construction site for a long time to come. So I think it's a positive outcome to not punish the people that we really, really want to help. There are so many reasons why not to do things, so to be able to say, actually, we're not going to punish you for this and for doing the right thing, we'll actually come to the party. I think it's a good signal to send from our council, so that's why I propose this. I'm really thankful to have the chair's support and hope I can count on you.
Yanni, Tim, Glenn.
Yeah, so this is obviously budgeted. We put in place a quantum in the budget. So there's $100,000 per year unbudgeted expenditure. Is that correct?
The cost of the up to 50% was approximately $100,000 per year. If we go up to 100%, that'll be $200,000. But in talking with Councillor Goff and Councillor Clearwater, the value of what we would get back for that Well, I can't put a dollar value on it. I think what we're hearing is it's enhancing the central city, and it would be money well foregone.
So what's the cost of doing it for the entire city rather than just the central city? Because
From memory, I'd have to remind myself of the report, but I think we did put boundaries around it for the central.
6.4 says qualifying hoarding projects will apply to those streets within or bounding a 30 kilometre per hour
Yes,
in a speed zone as defined by the Accessible City
that's
chapter.
right.
So,
And we were just looking, that's our staff recommendation, that we put a boundary on it, and it's also time bound to June 2016.
right. So I guess my question really is, understand the incentive aspect of it, can't understand why we'd only do it in the central city where we're spending a huge amount of money on transitional projects and not do it in the suburbs where we've got, I commend the people in Linwood recently who've done a fantastic mural. It just adds so much. So can I move an amendment, or can I ask staff or the committee whether they would consider this issue, and can we extend it to include the whole city?
I think we'd have to there'd be further costings if it's extended to the whole city, and that would need to come back to the committee level. So if you want to ask for it to come back to the committee, that would be okay, Yanni. There'd be obviously a lot further costs, and the committee hadn't agreed on that.
That's right.
Yeah.
I agree with Yanni there. Personally, I would like this applied to the whole city. I don't think now's the time to do that. There's been a big piece of work. I'm not on this committee. It's gone through a committee process. I made an amendment. I picked a battle that was winnable in this instance because we've got something in front of us and the work's been done. I would really urge, perhaps in addition to that a report comes back on the feasibility of extending this to the entire city.
Yep.
I've also got one other comment that I'd like to make as well, because I think it's important to counting.
Well, can I clarify that it already applies to all of the city with the listed heritage building? Is that right, or is that only within those spaces?
I need staff clarification on that.
We need some clarification. What are you looking at?
So that might be generic. I misread it because it was a separate 100% permitted. In the case of a listed, it wouldn't make sense to only have that covering the central city.
So would it be possible, just off what Yanni was saying, to say, in addition, one more point, that staff report back on the feasibility of applying the rebate citywide? Mm-hmm. Because I think that would be a really positive signal to send, and I would support it. I just wanted to add one thing as well. This is also, with it being cost neutral, I do want to stress that it is up to 100%, so the causer pays. When the council is losing a revenue stream, they can recoup it. And I'm pretty intent that if you have 3 council car parks, for instance, that are going to go for a period of time due to these hoardings being over there, charge them for it. It's a real source of revenue which the council is losing, so you can recoup that. If a traffic management plan needs to be implemented, recoup those costs. But when you're not getting anything tangible in return from just following the law, then I think it does make sense to offer the rebate. So it can be cost neutral, the cost can be recovered, but I think it's positive to have that final point that staff report back to apply this citywide. I'd like to get this through today, but next step would ideally be to apply this to the whole city.
Yep.
My understanding from the annual plan, we asked for a report to come back around rates remission for vacant sites that enabled transitional uses, art projects, etc. It seems a bit odd that this is done separately from that, but is that work actually happening, and is there a time frame for that report to come back? Because maybe it could just be added to that report rather than a whole new report, so that we actually look holistically at this issue.
I'll have to follow up and find out the timing on the rates remission report, but I'd suggest it probably fits better doing it as a separate report to tie it in with this rather than a rates remission.
Unless they had a hoarding,
Right.
if they fenced with an attractive hoarding. I mean, I noticed going by the art centre for example, that since they've put, you know, the images of what they're doing, and, you know, I mean, I see tourists taking photographs of the photographs of what's going on there, because it is the most extraordinary project. It's of world status, you know, what they're doing there.
Right,
So
right.
there are amazing stories to be told, and they should be told while the rebuild's happening.
And I mean, I just don't want this to languish for another 3 months around the rest of the city. I think that work should be pretty straightforward. Is there any reason it has to go back to the committee, or it couldn't come back to council?
Well, I think as Jane Parfitt has indicated, the vacant sites and rates remission is like a separate issue. This is around the hoardings and incentives to have them decorative. So it's a separate issue.
I think we're all accepted that
Yes.
that's a separate issue, and we're going to ask your committee to consider that issue and report to us on that. So we're going to add that to the resolution, a separate matter, and that staff report to the Infrastructure, Transport and Environment Committee on the
Vacant sites.
on rates remissions for vacant sites.
Yeah.
But see, if you give a blanket rates remission, then I'm afraid a blanket site does nothing for the people of Christchurch.
No,
You're saying, but for the use of transitional projects.
Yeah, that's right. I don't even think it needs to go back to the committee. It was an annual plan resolution that Jamie moved, and we heard from gap filler. And so it's a piece of work that's already in train. There's probably a resolution on the box to actually do it. All I'm saying is I think it's great that this has come, but I think we also need to make sure that that is actually progressing at the same time, because it's equally as important. But just in terms of the issue today, so accept that we don't need a special resolution around that whole vacant site, rate remission, etc., because we've already got one.
That's
Just for today, I do not understand the logic of putting a report back to the committee around extending this to the whole city.
Yeah, no,
if we want
that's
this to
true. That
happen,
could come
can we
straight
not just
back to
have it
council.
come straight back to council?
Yeah, that staff report back to
Definitely.
council, to the next council meeting.
Is it? Yeah. That would
Yeah,
be-
I mean, that's feasible. The next council meeting on the feasibility of applying the rebate to the whole
just
city.
crunching a few numbers,
It's
everything else
a
is-
cost analysis. That's all we're asking for. I think we all understand the benefits. Right, who else did I have? Tim and Glenn.
I'm totally in support of this. As long as the bar at 100% is kept very high, because not everyone will go to that level, so therefore there will always be some form of revenue. But the true cost is if we don't do it, because we've got some big events happening, international events next year. To add such life and vibrancy to our central city and other parts of the city would be absolutely amazing. We could even become a life of its own and have inter-company competitions. I mean, that would be absolutely brilliant if that happened. The opportunity for our local artists, we could even discover another Banksy. We've probably got a few, but to just give them some legal place to practice their art form would be absolutely wonderful. And even competitions. I mean, look at Gap Filler and what they did in those vacant spaces. So on their hoardings, it could be absolutely fantastic. And as I said, the real cost is if we don't open our minds and look at positively doing this. So I'm really in favour of this, but I do want to stress I want to set the bar at 100% high, because I think the potential is fantastic. And thanks, Jamie.
Thank you. Yes, I'm supportive, especially with 6.2. I think we need to break through that kind of structural disconnect where we were only given the CBD to be part of offering a plan. It's about a whole city. But my question's about the 5.1. Is it actually a cost or a loss of revenue? Because as more hoardings go up, obviously there's greater revenue. So I know it's not really splitting hairs. Is it actually a loss of revenue rather than, yep, okay, happy to support.
Great. So, Yanni?
Just to say, I totally understand why you'd do this, and I do think it makes a lot of sense. I think we also, as a council, need to think about how we actually display on our sites that we're working on, because I think we could probably improve, and if we're giving people rebate to do it on theirs, lets us actually be better in that space as well. I think, I appreciate that there's some revenue issues, so we need another report coming back to council. I would have liked to have extended it beyond the central city today. I just can see no reason why the central city should be any different. And again, I invite you to drive past Eastgate and look at the mural that's gone up on the corner. Now that one's probably all on private land, so it probably doesn't even qualify, but you can see what an impact it makes having those nice colourful artworks in the suburbs. So really strongly support this. I do think we need to follow up urgently around annual plan resolutions, around the rates for emissions, and also the other issue which we need to address at some point is when people are demolishing or constructing, the damage that's done to footpaths, and what is the actually quality of things going back. So Cashel Street, where the transitional cathedral is, if you look at Madras Street, there's whole cutways through the footpath that don't make it a very accessible city, that actually do a lot of damage, and the footpaths are just left in a really, really poor state after all the demolition has been done. So I think Tim's absolutely right. We need to get the city looking really good for our citizens, for their spirits, and also for the showcase that we're going to have next year. And hopefully some Christmas decorations will go up on some of these, which would be great. So this is a really great idea, and I thank the committee for the recommendations.
Good. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.